Good morning. According to Venture Labs, about 51%. Good morning. According to Venture Labs, about 51% of teenagers say that they want to become entrepreneurs. And now that's the third most popular major amongst college students. Our guest today, Vibha Rustagi, is an entrepreneur with an impressive story. Welcome, Vibha.
Thank you, Preetha. I'm super excited to be here and can't wait to share my story. Thanks for having me on the broadcast.
Well, we are really fortunate to have you tell us the story of how an engineer found a problem in the market and then devised a strategy to fill that market gap. Your story is not only one of entrepreneurial thinking, but it's also one of technology, your business savvy, and of course, your drive. So tell us, Vibha, tell us your story now.
Thanks, Preetha. So let me start with my personal journey where I was born in India. And because of my dad's career, we moved around quite a bit. And so my elementary and middle school was spent in Zambia in Africa, after which point I moved to India, to New Delhi. And that's where I finished my high school education. And I had always been interested in the sciences. So I went on to pursue my bachelor's in the US at University of Pittsburgh and graduated in electrical engineering from that school. And soon after that, I moved to a job in Atlanta with a company called Scientific Atlanta. And while I was there, I also pursued my MBA at the Georgia State University and focused around international business and marketing. So this is my academic background. And as I moved to Atlanta, in Scientific Atlanta, I started as an engineer and I worked on the video technology, which is where my focus is. And at that time, I was focusing on the methodologies and systems that were associated with the distribution of assets around TV programming. So really around the cable TV sector. And during my work at Scientific Atlanta, I also received 7 patents around the same kind of work, one of which was around the design and the functionality of the remote control. So it was really super cool. And I wanted to also understand how technology interacts with the business world. So after a few years in the engineering side, I moved into marketing and product management for the digital video business unit. And during that course of that time, I was responsible for the North American market and led the video business for that market. And then over the years, I also continued to expand into the international business and led the digital video business for the international market. And as we, this happened for about a few years, I would say about 10 years or so. And in 1999, when several internet companies were trying to get into the interactive TV business, what I noticed is that it was really challenging for them to understand the infrastructure, to understand the platforms, because at that point, the platforms on the set-top box and the TV side were fairly closed and proprietary, and especially the technology around the infrastructure and the networks were very complex. So I noticed a void in that space, and I got together with 2 other partners, and we co-founded ITAS. And the objective was to provide solutions and services, and which we continued to our clients or the companies that were trying to get into this space. So from that point onwards, we continued to grow from a 3-person startup to a global company with customers that were leading technology providers in their space within the video industry. And these were companies like Comcast, like Cisco, like Time Warner Cable, Cox Communications, Aris, Showtime Networks, Intel, and the likes of those, just to name a few. And as we grew our business and as we grew our associates and our employees, we became the premier provider of these services to the industry. And in 2014, we were acquired by Cognizant, which has proven to be a great decision on both the ends. Together, we are able to now provide innovative video solutions at scale and at reasonable cost to our clients. So this has been an incredible journey at Cognizant from a cultural and a technological fit. but most importantly, from our customers' perspective and our associates' perspective. So now, as you had mentioned, I am now heading the global video business for Cognizant, and I'm super, super excited because I think it's very cool to be doing this. And the reason for that is that, as we know, you guys are watching this on video, that video consumption is just growing at exponential rates. So as you can see with some of the data here, in Netflix, for example, the users watch more than 1 billion hours of content per week. So that's a lot of video that's being ingested. And then YouTube, the consumers are watching more than 73,000 videos per minute. Again, so the video consumption is just exponentially growing. And it will continue to grow, as it's estimated at about 55% annually through the next few years. In fact, the estimation of the traffic, the consumer internet traffic, it's estimated that in 2021, video will be about 82% of the consumer internet traffic. So that is a lot of video on the internet. So that's, I'm super excited about that. And of course, this is where, we see a lot of opportunities. So let me also start by describing some of the, where it all started and how the business started and where I started in the business on the analog side and transitioned to the digital side. So if we just go back historically to the 1940s and 50s, cable TV originated in the US almost simultaneously in 3-4 states. And then it was really primarily to enhance the poor reception of over-the-air TV signals, especially in areas like mountains or geographically remote areas. So the community antennas is what they were called, were erected on mountaintops or other high points. And then the homes were connected to the antenna towers to receive these broadcast signals. So obviously that wasn't something that was going to scale very fast. And then as we move over to 1972, around this time frame, Charles Dolan or Chuck Dolan and Gerald Levine of Sterling Manhattan Cable, they launched the nation's first pay TV network, now commonly known as HBO or Home Box Office Network. And this specific venture led to, what was really focused on the creation of a national satellite distribution system that used newly approved domestic satellite transmission. So what this means is that the satellites basically changed the business dramatically, paving the way for the explosive growth of the programming networks. So that, again, that continued to grow the networks from a cable perspective. And the 1980s, as you can see, that's a significant growth of the cable subscribers. There were 16 million cable subscribers by 1980. And what helped with that is also the Cable Act in 1984 that established a favorable regulatory framework in the industry, which stimulated the investment in cable plants and programming. So over the next 8 to 10 years, the industry spent more than $15 billion on the infrastructure and wiring of the US and billions more on the program development. So as we see, in the 1990s, that grew to about 53 million cable subscribers. So there are 53 million people that had subscribed to cable and 79 networks. So, and then that continued to evolve. And as you can see on your chart, in 1995, there were 139 nationwide programming services. So again, that has continued to grow at a very fast pace. And in 2000 and beyond, we experienced the acceleration of advanced services over cable's broadband networks. There was significant amount of innovation within the industry. And the cable companies began testing video services that changed the way people watch TV. So instead of watching live TV or linear TV, they were testing on-demand subscription-based television and interactive TV. So this is what was happening this is how the video transitioned from the early 1940s all the way to the 2000 timeframe. So certainly, I also want to bring your attention to some of the market drivers that influence this industry. And what you'll see is that, on the left-hand side, there's a remote control picture of the remote controls. And what that's just showing is that how that has evolved from the very basic remote to a remote that was more user friendly and was more intuitive. And the idea behind that was to be able to have the users find and search, discover the content that was on the TV, and also be able to interact with the content more than just watching TV. So more than just a sit down and watch TV experience. So and then for the first time in about 1997, Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, these were the two guys who co-founded Netflix, and they offered online movie rentals, so another way to watch or consume video. And for the first time, the DVD players became available in the US. And by the end of the decade, approximately 7 out of 10 TV households had subscribed to cable. And then TiVo and Replay TV also were the first digital video recorders that were introduced at that time. And then Comcast started to offer HD programming and on-demand content. So that continued. And then over the next few years, high-speed internet access service via the cable modems grew to more than 10 million subscribers. And then Roku, which is a company that manufactures streaming media devices, was also founded by Anthony Wood. So the DVD sales and rentals really overtook the VHS sales. And that, I think, as you may know, has completely changed the dynamic of the industry at that time. And then over the next few years, the number of subscribers changed dramatically and increased to 24 million who had subscribed to cable's high-speed internet service. The number of digital cable customers grew to 27 million. And the Netflix members grew over 4 million. So that was continuing on the rise. And the following year, after 2005, Sony released the PlayStation 3, which was the first console to use the Blu-ray disc format, which was capable of storing high-def videos, which later on Netflix also introduced streaming, which allowed members to instantly watch TV shows and movies on their personal computers. And then as we moved to 2008 and 9, Netflix also partnered with consumer electronic companies to stream on the Xbox 360, on Blu-ray disc players, on the TV set-top boxes. So video certainly became available through several devices. And as we continued, this, in the 2010, for example, the industry certainly continued to be disruptive. As you can see, the traditional TV has been augmented by various services. Netflix, for example, became available on the Apple iPad, on the iPhone, on the iPod, which meant that it was easy access for all the consumers, more time spent watching and consuming videos. In fact, in 2013, Netflix also became the first internet TV network that was nominated for an Emmy, which was very, very unusual. And then as we continue to see in 2015, Amazon also started to become a fairly key major player in the TV industry. And it continues to grow specifically around its video offerings. And then, in fact, last year, last year in 2017, we saw YouTube TV, which was launched. So again, a lot of original content, which was being produced across the board by several non-traditional providers of programming. And then in 2018, which is this year, AT&T completed its acquisition of Time Warner, which brought together the global media and entertainment leaders such as Warner Brothers, HBO, Turner, along with AT&T's technology. So they could reach now a large base of the video, mobile, and broadband customers that AT&T has. So the market has certainly continued to evolve at a very fast pace. And what I'd like to discuss here is how the technology has done the same. So if we go to in the 2000s, the way it worked is that cable content that was analog in the 80s and 90s had mostly transitioned to digital, where the service providers were offering services like on-demand services through the digital set-top boxes. And the studios were sending the content via serial digital interface, also commonly known as SDI. What that means is that the uncompressed content was sent to the broadcasters, and then who would then send it via the satellite to the cable plants. And then the signal was then encrypted, and then compressed at the time to MPEG-2, and then it was sent to the home. And then the set-top box would decrypt the signal and uncompress it to play it on the TV set. And then added on to that in 2010 with the advent of high-speed internet, content from the likes of YouTube and Netflix was broadcast via the web over to the homes, while the service provider content was also being made available not only in the homes, but also on the second screen devices, on your connected devices as well. So as we moved from that to what's happening today, the broadcasters, the sports teams, content providers, user-generated content providers, they're all sending the content via the cloud to the home and to connected devices, using either the Amazon Web Services or Google's Cloud Platform services. So that's how it has transitioned from the 2000s to where we are today. And so as we look to the future, what I'd like to also highlight is the trends that are going to change how video is delivered. So video is and will continue to be heavily influenced by significant amount of automation, by artificial intelligence, machine learning, by higher speeds with 5G networks. So these are some of the key influencers of how video will change and how the consumption of video will change. And what I'd like to draw towards in the next slide is, where are the opportunities? What does this mean for you? So as we look to the future, what we'll see is the usage of artificial intelligence and machine learning to kind of democratize the creation of broadcast-ready content. For example, fully automated cameras that may know where the action is. Companies are developing that today. And if we take that one step further, an automated system that would be able to pick, let's say, amongst multiple cameras, some of the best shots, right, is something that's in the future as well. And so when you combine that with 5G and broadcasting options, what that means is availability of high quality content to consumers will continue to increase dramatically. And then the way that 5G networks will play a role is enabling the broadcasters to broadcast without expensive satellite or fiber links, allowing the consumers the freedom to consume this content anywhere. So it makes it more cost effective for you to produce the content and also to broadcast the content. The second piece around the opportunity is around data. And I think we've all heard about how much the data is going to influence what we do, but certainly the volume of data is increasing at exponential rates. So the ability to apply analytics and AI to measure the volumes of data will enable the marketeers to target the end users in ways that were not possible before, which means, hyper-personalized content, which means it's very specific content to the consumer in ways that you may not have received this content earlier. And then the third part is around automated metadata tagging. What this means is that we're hearing a lot about content moderation, about inappropriate content, and so on. So automated metadata tagging will enable you to basically moderate whether it's offensive content, content that should not be available easily or available at all, will be moderated using automation. So this is the third piece. And then the fourth one is around our experience. How do we experience the video? Certainly, there's, the virtual reality aspect of immersive video experience or augmented reality and mixed reality is what we're seeing in the future as well. Already, it's obviously started in the gaming side of the industry, but there's several different use cases around that I'll mention a few in the next couple of slides. So this is what, my team and I focus on several areas in video, but I'd like to highlight three specifically here. So in addition to the classic video delivery, we work on solutions and services around OTT, over the top delivery. And this means, delivery around the services, around the workflow management and the business strategy for these pieces. So OTT delivery is one of them. Video intelligence is the other area. And then the third one is the immersive video experience. And what I'm going to do is do a little bit of a deeper dive into each of these, just to explain what each of these means to us and how that's impacting the industry. So as we look at the OTT delivery, this is a workflow of how the content is delivered. So around, there's content ingestion, content transformation, storage and distribution, and then the play out of the content and the analytics of the content. So really, as the content is ingested, it's collected from various origin points, and then it's transformed, or what you would say converted, for the appropriate format for distribution and storage. And as it's distributed and stored, or it's delivered via various different content delivery platforms, and then it's played out as you can watch it over managed or unmanaged devices. And then the last piece of it is really critical, which is the analytics of this, of the viewership information, of the data, of the video. So this really influences how people are watching, what they're watching, and so that can be influenced for a better consumer experience. So it's very critical as part of the overall OTT delivery process. The next one, so this slide is a snapshot of a VOD reference architecture. I promise I won't go into each of these boxes, but the idea here is to give you some information around, the various pieces that are involved in creating just this one piece of architecture, right? So there are many areas of opportunity here. Some that I've highlighted are around the metadata enrichment, which I mentioned, around the video quality of experience, around the ad management and ad decision servers. So as you can see on the left-hand side, this is the workflow that I just mentioned, and how it gets delivered ultimately involves a lot of different pieces. So there's certainly opportunities in each of those areas from an engineering perspective that I see that are very fascinating. The second part is the video intelligence that I mentioned. And that, there's three components that I'd like to highlight here. It's the video tagging, and then the video recognition, which I mentioned earlier on the metadata tagging, where you could recognize what kind of, images there are, what kind of videos there are, and then automation of that is where the moderation comes in. And then the third piece is around the analytics of the videos to create a better experience, to create better quality of experience of the content by monitoring the network and the content playback. So all of these three areas really collectively are the components of what we call the video intelligence segment. And then the third piece that we focus on is the immersive video experience. So I've broken it up into three very interrelated segments: the virtual reality segment, the augmented reality, and mixed reality. And certainly there are several use cases of these beyond just the gaming industry. There's also the training, the remote training, field services, and then education. So there's several different implementations of the video in the immersive video experience, especially related to sports and so on. So this is another very, very interesting area. There's so many different components to this, which would be great opportunities for you guys as well. So all in all, I'd like to sum up that, the video industry certainly is super cool. I'm obviously very excited about it, and it has a plethora of opportunities. So I would summarize saying, there's opportunities around content creation, around workflow management, optimization of video, around the quality of experience, how people like to see or watch video of high quality without interruption, the security of the content, which is really based around the artificial intelligence and the moderation, the artificial intelligence and machine learning, and then around the network and infrastructure optimization. So there's a significant amount of work being done on that side as well, and around software-defined networks, around video analytics, around video operations. So these are really fascinating areas around video that will continue to grow at exponential speeds. The last piece that I'd also like to point out in our discussion is a publication based on the digital revolution that's changing the course of the future of work. What we've done at Cognizant is, if you go to our website at cognizant.com and click on the latest thinking tab, you'll find this publication that highlights some of the jobs of the future and the areas where we think that the future is focused on, especially over the next 10 years. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation. And thank you, Preeta, for letting me speak on this.
Vibha, that was very, very impressive. And I really appreciate that you took the time to show us that slide on the future of work which Cognizant has put together, because I think that'll be of tremendous interest to our audience here who are all trying to figure out what the next 3-4 years in their professional journey will look like. And also, as always, it's truly impressive to hear your story of how you started, went into ITAS, sold it to Cognizant, and now you are innovating at the very forefront of video, which, I mean, I just have to look around me and know that the whole face of video has changed. So I do appreciate your time today in putting this talk together, and thank you so much for all that you've done. Once again, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, Preeta.